Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. For today, we will be talking about a new lesson which starts our list of topics for the second quarter. The second quarter is much faster and much shorter than we are expecting, so after this will be a very short discussion on transport mechanisms. Now, what are transport mechanisms? Transport mechanisms are what is making the cells perform their daily functions because necessary materials are delivered all throughout the body. Transport mechanisms in the cell is essential in accommodating the needs of the cell in the form of ions, nutrients, and other molecules. This is carried out with or without the use of energy. Ngayon, ano yung energy na ginagamit? The energy used here is ATP or adenosine triphosphate. Now, there are two types of cell transport or transport mechanisms. These are the passive transport or the active transport. Passive transport does not require energy or simply hindi niya kailangan ng ATP. Active transport, on the other hand, needs energy or kailangan niya ng ATP. Okay? The cell accomplishes the transport through the cell membrane depending on the use of molecules or chemicals carried. Transport mechanisms can be in the form of simple diffusion, exocytosis, endocytosis, movement of ion channels, or active transport. So, again, lilinawin ko po my dear students, pagdating sa transport mechanisms, may dalawang klaseng cell transport, passive and active. When you say passive, ito po yung walang energy kailangan. Active naman, kailangan na energy or in the form of ATP. So let's go first with passive transport. Passive transport is an energy independent mechanism. Energy independent meaning hindi niya kailangan ng energy. It can occur without the use of ATP or energy, which this allows small molecules to enter into the cell without energy consumption. So basis of the movement is through a concentration gradient. Now, ano yung concentration gradient? Kumbaga, this is the standard of movement of particles from higher concentration to lower concentration. Yun yung concentration gradient natin. Higher concentration to lower concentration. Okay? Yun yung tinatawag natin again na concentration gradient. So, pagdating sa passive transport, movement is according to the concentration gradient. And ano ulit ang concentration gradient? Higher to lower concentration. I'm continuously repeating this para hindi nyo malilimutan yung information. Okay? Now, in passive transport, there are different types. One of these are simple diffusion. Simple diffusion is the movement of particles from an area of higher concentration to an area with less concentration. So, you can see that it goes with the concentration gradient. Okay? So, bakit po ang passive transport hindi kailangan ng energy? Halimbawa na lang po, nasa ilog ka. May current ang ilog o may agos, di ba? Naglagay ka ng bangka, sumakay ka sa bangka. What happens? Kusang dadalin ng ilog, ng current ng ilog yung bangka. Imagine yung bangka, yung molecules or yung particles na kailangan i-transport. You don't need to run your motor energy. Hindi mo kailangan mag-sagwan, hindi mo kailangan mag-exert ng effort para gumalaw ka kasi nga yung tubig na nagkikerry sa yung water current na. Ganun ang passive transport kaya wala na siyang energy. So from higher concentration to lower concentration, kusa na lang siyang dinadala. Kumbaga, it goes with the flow of the concentration gradient. Okay? So in simple diffusion, again, movement of particles from higher to lower concentration, and only the cell membrane is required for small molecule movement because the cell membrane regulates what enters and exits inside and outside of the cell. So common molecules that freely pass the cell membrane through simple diffusion are water, carbon dioxide, and oxygen. However, simple diffusion cannot accommodate charged molecules, ions, or large molecules such as nucleic acids, proteins, carbohydrates, and large lipids, may tinatawag tayong facilitated diffusion. Yun yung nagdadala sa mga charged ions or molecules such as yung mga sodium, potassium, phosphates, etc. Okay? Na yun. Before we move to talking about facilitated diffusion, let's talk about again the concentration gradient. It is the difference between the greater concentration and lower concentration. So, movement is from higher to lower. Okay? That's the concentration gradient. And after diffusion has occurred, it will attain equilibrium kung saan there is equal concentration from both areas, whether inside the cell or outside the cell. Okay? Pantay na yan. So, halimbawa, mataas ang concentration sa labas ng cell, so saan pupunta ang particles? Papasok. Mataas ang concentration sa labas ng cell, saan pupunta ang particles? Papasok pa rin. 'Di ba? Kasi from higher to lower, kung nasan yung mas onti yung concentration, dun pumupunta yung molecule. So halimbawa, sa loob ng cell, mas mataas ang concentration, so lalabas ngayon ng particles. That's passive transport. Okay? Now we go with facilitative diffusion. Still on passive transport, ano pinagkaiba ni facilitated diffusion kay simple diffusion? In simple diffusion, and in facilitated diffusion, ganun pa rin naman, higher concentration to lower concentration. However, we mentioned earlier that some molecules are larger and hindi kaya na i-transport or ipasok ni para maipasok, ma-accommodate ngayon yung malalaking molecules such as charged particles, etc. Okay? In this case, halimbawa, some lipids will carry itong mga proteins na to para makapasok sa cell membrane. Or sometimes water can be the vehicle. When you say vehicle, siya yung magdadala. Okay, basta there has to be a carrier. There has to be something that would carry the cell the particle inside or outside the cell membrane. Kaya facilitated diffusion, may nagpa-facilitate, may nagki-carry. Okay? That's facilitated diffusion. Okay? So again, difference is simple diffusion kay facilitated diffusion. Simple diffusion, just the particles moving from higher concentration to lower concentration, go with the flow. Facilitated diffusion, meron kailangan mag-assist, may magfa-facilitate pa mismo ng movement ng particles. Okay? Then you have osmosis. Osmosis, ito yung pinapagawa ko sa inyo activity, yung magdo-drawing kayo ng osmosis process. Kasi osmosis is a type of diffusion that involves only water. Movement of water molecules across the cell membrane, whether it's inside or outside the cell yung pupuntahan niya. Ngayon, osmosis is mediated by the change in solute concentration at the cellular level, whether this is inside or outside the cell. Okay? So, if you can still recall, meron tayong tinatawag na properties of a solution na yung solvent and the solute. So, si solvent, siya yung tumutunaw o nagdi-dissolve, which is water. Solute, yun yung tinutunaw o yung dinidissolve. In this case, water is attracted towards where there is higher concentration of solute. Kung saan mas maraming solute, doon pupunta si water. So halimbawa, nasa loob ng cell si water, mataas ang content ng solute sa labas ni cell, lalabas si water ng cell. Kung mataas ang solute concentrate sa loob ng cell, papasok ang water sa cell. Is that clear? Kaya nagkakaroon ng iba't ibang solution. Diba? Solution is the mixture of the solute and the solvent. So, hypotonic solution, this is when there is a lower concentration of solute outside compared to inside the cell. So, kung mas mababa ang concentration sa labas kumpara sa loob, saan pupunta ang tubig? Papaloob ng cell. Kaya notice, etong illustration dito sa baba, the cell is turgid or namamaga or swollen. Kasi puno siya ng tubig. Okay? Kapag hypertonic naman, higher concentration of solutes are outside the cell. In this case, lumabas ang tubig, nag-shrink ngayon ang cell. Isotonic solution naman, there is an equilibrium or a balance of level of solute inside and outside the cell. So kung balance na yan, normal na lang yung movement ng water. Okay? Ngayon, both of these happen in plant and animal cells. However, pagdating sa hypertonic solution, there is a different reaction to the cell between plants and animals. How is that different? Kasi 'di ba, plant cells have cell walls. So, notice sa hypertonic solution, pag lumabas ang tubig, nag-shrink yung cell. However, in this case, hindi nag-shrink sa plant cell. Sa animal cell, it will shrink, but in the plant cell, it will not. Bakit po? Kasi po, may cell wall pang nagsusurround sa labas. What only happens is plasmolysis. Plasmolysis is when the water moves out of the plant cell, wherein the plasma membrane or the cell membrane detaches from the cell wall. Tingnan nyo dito, nag-detach na siya. So, ang tawag na ngayon sa itsura ng cell ay plasmolyzed. Pero kung animal cell ito, shrinkage or nag-shrink. Okay? So, again, ulit-ulitin natin ha. Hypotonic solution, mas mataas ang solute concentrate sa loob ng cell, papasok ang tubig. Hypertonic, lalabas ang tubig. Pag animal cell, mag-shrink. Kapag plant cell, plasmolyzed. Plasmolysis ang tawag dito sa plant cell. Isotonic, there is a balance between level of solute and solvent sa labas at sa loob ng cell. So that's it for passive transport. Let's go now sa active transport. Active transport is when the substance goes out or enters the cell against a concentration gradient. So ito, notice, paulit-ulit sinasabi ang concentration gradient. So sa concentration gradient, continuous ang movement. Wherein, it needs energy for it to be continuous. Bakit po kailangan energy? Halimbawa na lang, you're going against the current of the river. Dahil may gusto ko puntahan. So you need to be active. You need to have energy. You need to exert effort. Kailangan talaga magsasagwan ka para, o magpepedal ka para lang, or kailangan mo nung motor or nung makina ng bangka para makagalaw ka. It needs energy para you can go against the current. Okay? Yun ang active transport. Kaya kailangan siya ng adenosine triphosphate. And bukod sa ATP, meron pang protein na nasa cell membrane na kung saan tinatawag na active transport pumps na tumutulong sa active transport. Kasi nga, kailangan talaga ng cell ng energy para magawa ito. Kasi nga po, it goes against the concentration gradient. Kung saan, from low concentration, pupunta ka sa high concentration. Imagine na lang ganito. You use more energy pag umaakyat ka kaysa pag bumababa ka, di ba? Okay? So, in active transport is what you call the vesicular or bulk transport, wherein the cell requires huge quantities into or out of the cytoplasm. This may require a mechanism transport called vesicular or bulk transport. This requires ATP for the mechanism to take place. Again, kailangan ng energy. Ngayon, may dalawang klase itong bulk transport or vesicular transport. Bakit siya bulk or vesicular? Dahil maramihan ng ginagawa dito. And malalaki ang molecules. Okay? So, dalawang klase yan. Endocytosis and the endocytosis and exocytosis. What's the difference? Endocytosis, papasok ng cell. Exocytosis, papalabas. So, endocytosis is when large quantities of substances into the cell are moved from the extracellular fluid. Extracellular movement, yan yung outer environment ng cell. So, first, you have phagocytosis or cell eating. It is when the cell engulfs or eats bacteria, foreign particles, pathogens, etc. Anything that may cause harm to the cell. Kakainin na cell yon through phagocytosis, then they bind the pathogens and internalize them into phagosome. Magiging phagosome yon na kung saan ito ay mapupuno ng acid and the lysosomes will then destroy them. That's phagocytosis. Pinocytosis naman is cell drinking. So basically, they are the same thing, but how the things that they handle are different. Yung isa solids, yung isa liquids, fluids. Okay? Then there's receptor-mediated endocytosis, wherein this is a type of endocytosis through the help of receptor proteins. In this case, halimbawa, meron kang kailangan talaga, kukunin mo yun. Hindi yung basta-basta kuha ako ng kuha na hindi mo naman alam na kung para saan yun. Halimbawa, ikaw yung cell. So in this case, the cell will then use the receptor proteins to get or target a specific molecule na kailangan niya kuhain. Kaya nagiging controlled ito. Okay, for instance, kailangan ng iron. The receptor proteins will target iron. At kailangan ng additional lipids, etc., etc. So, yun lang ita-target niya. Okay? And lastly, there's exocytosis, nilalabas. Ano ang nilalabas ni cell? The cell moves out bulk of quantity of materials outside the cell, which is the reverse of endocytosis. Naglalabas naman siya ngayon. Ano yung nilalabas niya? Hormones, enzymes, and other important polypeptides outside the cell. So halimbawa, the female body produces the hormones estrogen and progesterone. So, this is needed especially in puberty. So, the cell will undergo exocytosis. Ilalabas niya yung mga hormones na na-produce to be transported to other parts of the body needing the progesterone and estrogen. So again, pag endocytosis, papasok ng cell, exocytosis, nilalabas ng cell. Okay? So that's it for today. I will be sending this PowerPoint presentation again to you. And please prepare for a 10-item quiz on Monday. Okay, have a nice day everyone and stay safe.